Hey guys, so today's topic is about the ethics of the employee, and we'll be tackling about the rights of the employee, specifically here in the Philippines. So let's go about that. So the first thing we have to understand is in every business, there's an organizational structure. Okay, so if you haven't learned yet from your NCHEP class, or if you haven't heard of what an organizational structure is, basically it's how a business is structured in terms of the people. So if you would look at the PowerPoint, sometimes you would see like an administrative assistant here, okay, under the interior designer, under senior interior designer, okay, and then there's a manager. So in a way, the organizational structure is how people are organized in an organization. Okay, so it could be from the high level people like your CEOs, okay, and then you got your your other high managers, and then you got third level managers, and then you have your normal employees. So when you talk about employees, it's actually we're talking about everyone here in the organizational structure, not just the people at the very bottom. Okay, so it could be an architect as an employee, and this is a way of organizing the people of your business in a much more coherent way. Okay, you'll be tackling this more in your other management classes. Okay, so people are hired to fulfill roles in the business. Okay, that's the most basic reason why a businessman, okay, would hire someone. Okay, and another a very important factor here is that each person is important in the organizational structure. You wouldn't really hire someone if they weren't important, or else that would just be a loss to your company. So, for example, you wouldn't hire 1,000 delivery riders when you would only need 10 delivery riders for your current business. The other 990 would just be a waste of money because you have to pay them. Okay? And what's very important is, aside from the physical assets such as computers, programs, or the like, the company heavily relies on people to operate. So, especially here in the Philippines, we're not yet in a level of automation that it actually is possible for a business to keep operating without the use of people or without relying on people. And even heavily automated industries such as factories in Japan still rely on people from time to time to make sure that everything is working properly. As you would have probably experienced before, you have machines that can fail. Okay, if machines aren't perfect and they're not self-repairing, you still need people to do the work. Machines are just there to help them. So the company still heavily relies on people to operate, and that's why employees are such an important factor of any organizational structure. Okay, and if you would ever try to start your own business, you would realize that the people are one of the greatest assets that help your business grow. Okay, so sometimes you could be working on your own, it'll be very difficult, but once you start hiring people, it becomes a lot easier to run your business. And the final thing is, the company is nothing without its employees. Okay, without employees, your company would be on the road to failure. Okay. And for big companies, they actually try to pirate other people from other companies. Okay, but by pirate I mean, for example, if you're working in one airline, okay, another airline may want to pirate you from that company. In other words, hire you for their own company given your track record. That's how important employees are. Like, it's not a common thing that it's not uncommon to see people switching from one company to another because they got a higher offer. Okay, they got better benefits, and that's why employees are very important to a certain industry. Okay, without the right people, a business is bound to fail. Okay, takeaway here is that your people can make or break the success of your business. Okay, and because of the concept of human dignity, okay, all employees are valuable, regardless if you're talking about the lowest of the low, your custodians, to the CEO. All employees are valuable, and they bring some level of value to your organization. Now, if you think about it, right now especially in the time of a pandemic, or when we were still handling the pandemic, we would actually see how important your frontliners were, the people that we often did not pay attention to, such as custodians, delivery riders. They became such an important part of continuing a certain level of normal for us when we were going through a heavily quarantined period. Okay, and that's why it's much more important that we realize that regardless of your position in the company, all employees are valuable. Okay, so what are the basic rights of an employee? Take note, these are taken from a Philippine standpoint. So these are the very basic rights of an employee here in the Philippines. Okay, and the very first one is that employees have a right to salaries and compensation. Okay, what that means is that regardless of your work, as long as you did work, you have the right to demand a fair and just compensation. Okay, one of the perfect examples of this is that, for example, you're good at graphic design. Um, if you do work for someone, okay, it's your right to demand a certain level of pay for yourself. Okay, so what do we we'll tackle what I think is fair in the next few slides. But um, if you're working for someone, it's just right for you to be paid, regardless of that amount or what you work out as a deal between you two. And compensation can either be a wage or salary, something you're paid to a normal employee, such as bi-weekly salary, so every 2 weeks you're paid, or a commission for project based. So, for example, you hire me to make a logo for your business. That's a commission based work where I'm just paid once the work is accomplished, depending on our agreement. Okay, commission based workers are also, like, for example, car salesmen. They get a certain level of commission when they're able to sell a vehicle, or, for example, selling real estate. Okay, so for example, it could be a mix of both also. So you have salary for selling real estate. So let's say you're paid 20,000 a month to try and sell real estate. But once you're able to sell a condominium, or sell a house, you get an extra commission for your sale. So probably anywhere between 2 to 3%, or a 5% fee, or a set fee for selling a house. So it can be a mix of both, but the very basic right to it is that you have a right to your salaries and compensation, especially when you're able to accomplish work for the company. Okay, so let's tackle what we think is a just and fair wage. Okay, so consider the following first. What is the work that's being done? Okay, when you're deciding what salary of a person, is the level of work difficult, or is it something easy to accomplish? Okay, so we have to consider what the work that is being done. Okay, so what are the experiences and credentials of an employee? So typically, the more experienced an employee is, or the more credible he is, the higher the salary or the wage that he can demand. For example, if you were to hire a high school student starting out in graphic design, you probably wouldn't pay that big for a project. But let's say you're hiring a national artist to do work for you, you'd probably pay more, or upwards in the thousands and hundred thousands for a commission work, as compared to somebody with less experience and credentials. Okay, that's why typically people who've been working for a company for a longer period of time are paid higher because of their experience and credentials that they've earned through the years. There's also some things you have to consider, such as hazards and risk of the work being asked. So typically, for some positions, there is a higher level of hazard or risk. Um, Take, for example, news reporters. They usually have what we call hazard pay. And this hazard pay is for them to go out in the field. For example, they have to cover the Marawi siege or a storm. When they go out to report on those, they have a hazard pay on top of their normal commission or their normal pay because of the risk involved. Okay. So typically, the riskier a job is, there should be a corresponding bonus to it when you're asking somebody to work that job. And then you can also look at how other companies are paying for that same role. So, for example, you want to become a flight attendant or a pilot, you can look at how much other companies are looking to pay for the same role. Okay, so for example, if airline A is paying 300,000, you can look at that as the range of what you can expect from, let's say, airline B. And then bonuses and rewards. You can also give bonuses and rewards as salaries and wages could be not enough. And so, for example, they did a really good job. They sold 10 vehicles this month. So you can have a bonus or a reward to congratulate or reward them for their contribution to the company. Okay, so the salary and compensation can actually become a really powerful tool, motivational tool for employees. Okay, people work mainly for money. I mean, there are other factors, but pay and salary and compensation is a really big factor for how people choose their employers. Okay, so for some people, they may seem to look at if the pay is too low, they may choose a different company to work with. Okay, and when you give bonuses and rewards, it could actually boost the morale of your employees. So that's why salary and compensation is a very powerful motivational source for some employees. Okay. Now next, employees have a right to security of tenure. Uh, when you're hired as a regular employee, you cannot just be dismissed from work except for a just or authorized cause and only after a lengthy due process. So what do we call what's a just cause? There are some cases where an employee can be immediately let go. Well, there's still a process, but they can be let go when a wrongdoing has been done. For example, if an employee is accused of stealing from the company, once an investigation is done and it's proven that there are discrepancies or there are some things that uh, are not right with this certain employee, they can be let go and they can be dismissed from work to avoid further damage in the future. Okay, for example, if an employee breaks his or her contract, it can be a cause for dismissal. Or let's say your employer, even a manager, for example, harasses an employee, it can be the right of the employee or the business to terminate that employee. And then an authorized cause could be the economic circumstance not due to the employee's fault. So we've seen this happen. This is what you normally call a layoff or a retrenchment. And this usually happens when the economy is not doing too well and the business is struggling. So businesses can let go of people under an authorized clause where the business needs to save on expenses, for example, because they need to keep their cash flow alive or they have to keep their business alive, so they're cutting down on expenses. But there is a due process. We always have to remember that there is a due process for any of this. So it can be for just causes, an investigation done by the human resources. Okay, so they'd investigate the case. But for authorized causes, there'd be a due process where typically you would inform your employee at least a month or two before they let go. What the law states is at least 30 days before they're dismissed. You have to inform the employee that they're being dismissed. You can't just, for example, okay, tomorrow you don't have work anymore. I'm sorry, I can't pay you anymore. Okay, that's not allowed under our law. You have to give them time, okay, to get their work in order. So typically it's around 30 days, and by law it's around 30 days that you have to give them time to before you let them go. So layoffs typically happen a month before you're actually laid off, and typically they would give you a separation package. Okay, so if they let you go because of the business can't support you, sometimes they'd pay you for 3 months worth of salary, so that you could keep yourself afloat for a while you look for a new job. Or they can even do other things such as some employers actually forward your resume to other employers so that you may get hired. Okay, so there is a due process. You can't just be terminated immediately. Okay, so some examples of just causes: so serious misconduct, willful disobedience of employers, or disconnected with work. Okay, when you disobey and its connection to your work, neglect of duty, fraud, okay, commission of a crime. Okay, so It could be against the employer, employee's family members, or other employees, or other analogous cases. So anything that can fall under these usually are just what we call just causes. And then authorized causes is labor saving, so they need to cut down on expenses, trying to cut down redundancy. By redundancy, we mean, for example, the employee is you have 5 employees performing the same role and it can actually be done by 2 or 3 people. So you try to cut down the redundancy, cut down on cost. Retrenchment, prevent losses. For example, we went through that during COVID-19 because of businesses closing, and closure or cessation of businesses. So obviously, once the business closes, the employees have to be let go. But there is a due process to follow for this, and actually, the only just causes are allowed for employees to terminate you without the 30 days of notice. Okay, so regardless of reason and due process needed, so you get a notice of employees dismissal even for just causes, and you wait for an opportunity for the employee to explain herself, and then you get a notice depending on what is decided within the company. And for authorized causes, it's usually less investigatory. There's usually not an investigation for this, and usually you don't have to explain your side. It's just that you're informed 30 days before this, at least 30 days before dismissal with a written notice, and what the reason is. If usually for authorized causes, this just doesn't happen to one employee. It's usually on a larger scale. But for just causes, you have a much more lengthy process to go through, and you do have the right to explain your side based on the allegations against you. Then the last, or one of the last ones, is you have rights to leaves and vacation. So when we talk about leaves, these are paid days where the employee does not render work. Okay, so for example, you have things called service incentive leave. So these are the things that are required of by the law. So you got service incentive leave. So after 1 year of service to the company, you get 5 days of leave. A maternity leave, let's say you just gave birth, you have 60 to 78 days of paid leave. So you're not when you take your maternity leave, you're not allowed to be not paid. You're still supposed to be paid as it's your right to be paid. You got your paternity leave, which is 7 days for fathers. The maternity leave is obviously for mothers. Solo parent leave. So if you're solo parent, you have 7 days. Okay, and they also have a leave for victims of violence against women and children. So hopefully none of you ever experienced this, but there is a special law for that where you get to have leaves when you're a victim of violence, and a special leave for women for up to 2 months, especially when they undergo surgery. Okay, so these are the basic rights to leaves and vacations that people are usually given based on Philippine law. So actually, there are other leaves such as sick leaves and vacation leaves that are subject to employer-employee agreement. Okay, so it's most common for companies here to be given 15 days of sick leave and 15 days of vacation leave. So what this means is that you get to choose the day. Let's say you fall ill today. Think of it as your absences, and then you're allowed to take a short leave for the day if you're not feeling well. Okay, you have 15 days of vacation leave. Let's say you want to go on a trip with your family. You have 15 days to use to be able to go on vacation. Okay, and while companies are not required to give these, basically your sick leave and your vacation leave, employees often take this into consideration when they consider job opportunities. Okay, these are benefits which we'll tackle more in a future session, but employees usually take this into consideration when they consider job opportunities. Okay, so for example, for us teachers, we have 15 days of sick leave for the year, and then our vacation leaves are set to when you also have your vacation. So for example, December or during summer vacation, we also have those are our vacation leaves. So it's really dependent on your employer-employee agreement. Some companies they have more leaves. Some companies allow you to convert your leaves to cash. So basically, if I don't go absent for this year, I can have my leave converted to a form of cash payment, and then 15 days of vacation leave. Okay, it could be more for different companies. And some employees do consider leaves as something very important when they're considering a job application. Okay. One of the last ones is employees have the right to humane working conditions. Okay. Employees have the right to feel safe in their workplace, and employers need to create a healthy working environment. So this means that you're not overworked and you're not working in an environment that is not conducive to working. So this involves proper working hours, a decent workplace, appropriate workload, and protective measures if work is hazardous. Okay, so for example, let's take for example a nurse. Okay, the nurse has to have proper working hours. For example, after a 12-hour shift, the nurse is free for the next 12 hours to rest and recuperate, or it could be a whole day of work and then you get 2 days off. So, working hours ensure that you do not overwork your employees. Okay, a decent workplace. For example, do you have a desk to sit in? Do you have a place to work at? And there are some examples. If you look online, there are some really non-decent workplace. Like there are examples of teachers having to work in a small cubicle in a bathroom. Okay, that's not a decent workplace and it's not a healthy working environment. Okay, some people may be overworked. For example, our health system is very overworked. Doctors, nurses, they're very overworked, and this does not do well for how well they can accomplish their task. If people are overworked, they don't have a decent workplace, they're always tired, they're not able to do their work to the best of their abilities. And obviously, protective measures if the work is hazardous. So, I don't know if you've seen those in certain construction places where they have the image of the guy wearing a hard hat, a vest. Those are protective measures, or the PPEs that nurses and doctors wear when they deal with contagious diseases. Okay. So examples, you provide rest days for employees so you don't overwork them. Overtime pay for any work done beyond the normal hours. Ensuring facilities are proper for employees, so proper desks, air conditioning, restrooms, water dispensers, all these things that could make that the facilities are proper for someone working in that facility. So providing extra pay for hazardous work. So yeah, like the news reporter example, or if you're working in a hospital and you're assigned to a infectious ward. So these are humane working conditions. Okay, sometimes you can't avoid hazardous work. So the best you can do is provide extra compensation, provide them with the necessary materials they need. Okay, and of course you ensure that your employees are able to work to the best of their conditions given in an environment. Okay. So, if the working condition is actually not proper, it makes your employees inefficient and unmotivated to work. But if they have a nice working environment, it can actually boost the level of productivity that they're able to do in a day. And obviously, when your employees are more efficient, the business is also working better. Okay? But just following the basic rights of an employee does not always make the workplace ethical. Okay, um, let's say you are starting a company and you provide these basic rights just to work according to the law. We still have to re-examine if what you're doing is actually ethical or not. Okay, just because you're providing compensation, your working place is humane in a sense. Okay, it does not always make your workplace ethical. There are some things that you have to re-examine and question so that you know if your workplace is ethical or not. Okay? So the basic rights are just there to provide the most foundational things for an employee, but it doesn't always mean that it's it makes your workplace automatically ethical and the way you treat your employees automatically ethical just because you provide them these. Okay? So you always have to re-examine it because for example, humane working conditions, we don't have a concrete definition of what humane is. It's not black or white. There's always that gray area. What is a proper and just salary? You'd have different opinions. Okay? So for example, an example of this is the salary. For us here, it could be a fair salary to pay a doctor 60, 70,000 pesos in a month. But if you bring that same doctor in a different context, let's say America, it could be not enough to be paying that doctor the US dollar equivalent of 60 to 70,000 pesos. It could be too little for them. Okay? So we always have to re-examine, and we always have to look at these rights as just foundational. They provide the most basic backbone, but they don't automatically ensure that your workplace is ethical. Okay? So that's it for now. If you have any questions, please do just post it either under the video if this on YouTube, or obviously just try to use the Google Classroom as a place to ask me questions. Thank you.